tried to tell him also that I had my wallet in my pocket, and he told me, he said, "Don't reach in your pocket." And at that time, I sort of just stood there, and he yanked my wallet out of my pocket. And that's when I just more or less felt like something was going to go wrong here. And I didn't know what. They got me in the car, and just total chaos happened from that point.
Hello everybody, welcome to Mel's Place. Yours truly, Mel Griffin. So often we, as citizens, feel that we don't always get a fair break in life. Today we're going to be a little bit different on Mel's Place. We're going to speak about police misconduct. I'm so happy to have on Mel's Place in the studio today Mike Fair, who is a victim of police misconduct. After hearing his story, perhaps you may be able to relate it to you with reality. Hello, Mike.
How you doing, Mel?
How are you doing?
Oh, I'm hanging in there, sir.
Great, great. I thought that on this edition of Mel's Place that we would be a little bit different than usual, because you have witnessed something that often happens with police brutality, police misconduct, and some of the other areas that are happening all over the country. Of course, people say that, well, our police officers are not like that, because they're always in the street, directing traffic, helping the children across, the elderlies, patrolling the communities. But there's a dark side that some people just don't see.
That's true.
And that's why I want to have you here on Mel's Place to talk about some of these areas. Mike, we're going to get right into the program. On December the 8th in the year of 1994.
Well, what happened was I was sitting there over in the parking lot of Toys R Us, waiting on my wife to get off from work. She had her car parked back there, and I also parked my car back there because I knew she'd be getting off at, say, 6 o'clock in the evening or so. And what happened was I was reading a newspaper, minding my own business, when a car approached from the back of me there. And what happened was is that this car literally just stood there for maybe, I'd say 15, 20 minutes or so, and it did not move. I had thoughts in my mind like maybe it was someone waiting for someone in the store, or maybe it was someone that just was sitting there curious like I was, waiting either for their wife or waiting for a friend or whatever. But I continued to read my newspaper, and I felt that, you know, maybe over in time, this person would maybe go away, you know? Or maybe they would just, like I said again, just sitting there. I was sitting there sort of wondering what was going on, but then again, I just glanced at the time there, and I figured that it was time for me to pick up my wife. And at that time, it was 6:30. I went around to the front of the bureau, picked up my wife, got her in the car, and at that same time, these people were following me in a car that I did not even know, were bumper to bumper with me all that time. I said to my wife, there's something wrong, because they pulled back from us and did the same thing that they did to me on the other side. So I pulled out of the bureau, pulled around to the back, and I sat there. I got my wife into the car. And once I got my wife into the car, I told her to just follow me because I didn't want her to go back there in the dark. That's the reason why I was there anyway, because I didn't want my wife to get into a car in the dark by herself. Nobody could see her back there. So that's the reason why I was parked back there in the first place. At that time, we pulled off. They were bumper to bumper with my wife. I was in the front. They followed me over to 2246 South Hamilton Road. That was my other office at the time. And I sort of got out of my vehicle that had Fair Landscaping on it and got into her car. And at that point in time, the officers then, or people, whoever they may have been, followed us over there. Once we got to Sunoco, I told my wife, something's not right. Then that's when everything started to happen. The officers came out with their guns.
Did you know they were police officers when they got out?
Two of them, they did not even have a badge where you could see it. And I thought, at first when I saw them, they were criminals.
So they were in an unmarked car?
Right. And so I thought they were there to, you know, not knowing, I thought they were there to try to accost us because I'm a businessman. So I sort of thought that there was just maybe a robbery attempt. But then I saw a police officer's car also come, and he sat there. And he also pursued me and got me in the car. And before they got me in the car, let me just slow down. Before they got me in the car, the officer asked me, did I have any ID?
Okay, Mike, let's back up just a little bit now. When they approached you, coming upon you, because you didn't know who they were.
I did not know who the first set of people were.
Okay.
They had no badges.
How were they dressed?
They had on jackets. I couldn't see a badge.
Okay.
So I
how did
didn't
you
know.
respond?
I didn't know how to respond.
Okay.
I just got out of the car and I looked at them.
And then what happened from that point
And
on?
from that point on, the officer came over to me, or from the I guess the cruiser itself that had Columbus Police on it. He sort of motioned me over, and then the other two officers came and sort of start patting me down. And at that point, Mel, I was sort of in a disarray because, I mean, I know I had done nothing wrong. And the officer, Donathan Bell, tried to snatch my wallet out of my pocket. At that point, what could I do but just stand there and let him do that?
So after he snatched the wallet out of your pocket, what happened from that point?
They got me into the cruiser, and once I got in the cruiser, they were starting to, you know, check me out. And then another thing started to happen. Donathan Bell, Officer Bell, started to harass my wife, Tammy Fair. Tammy asked a simple question. What did Michael do? Donathan Bell said, shut up. Don't worry about that. I'll do whatever I want to do here with you. So when I heard that, I started to hit the windows and go off. And then the other officer, Terry McCarnell.
Okay, can we remember to, throughout the remainder of the program, to just use officer in their last name?
Okay.
Because they're not here to explain their side. Okay. All right.
Okay. Okay. But also that the other officer that approached me, he started to harass my wife by putting his hands on her, grabbing her from behind, and pinning her on the car after he had gave her those statements about, you know, I'll do what I want to do to you.
He actually said that?
Yeah. And so I started hitting on the windows inside the cruiser because I could hear it, what was going on, and I was just disturbed by that. So I started going off, and the other officer that was there on the scene, he went over to this officer and told him, cool out, we're checking Mike out. After this officer walked away from the other officer, he started again on my wife. And this time he was trying to put his handcuffs on her, and she had not done anything wrong. That disturbs me because she really didn't have anything to do with it.
Harassing your wife, as you would say. What were they doing, actually?
Well, anytime I think an individual puts his hands on a law-abiding citizen.
How did he put his hands on her?
He just, I mean, she had nothing to do with what they were doing with me.
So he asked her to step out of the car?
Right.
Okay, and as she stepped out of the car, he proceeded to put his hands
on her.
Okay, I mean, when you
for
say
no reason or fashion.
Put hands on her, are you saying that he actually grabbed her?
Yes,
or
he grabbed her
by her arms
and pinned her on the on her vehicle, like he was trying to arrest her, like he was trying to get her hands together.
Okay.
And that's what disturbed me, because I start hitting the windows, because that's the only thing I could do to let the other officers know that something was wrong over here. Mm-hmm. And after he had started to try to put his handcuffs on, another officer walked over again to this officer and also told him, listen, cool out, man. We're checking Mike out. So after that happened, he came away from my wife while I was in the cruiser. He came over by the cruiser, and he started to taunt me. And he just looked at me like, see what I can do. Look at me. Look what I can do to you.
Now, the article reads, and even the complaint that was filed says that your wife proceeded to be discourteous. She was shouting, and she was more like retaliating in a disrespectful way.
Well, when you've got an officer over 225 pounds laying over on a young lady that's 105 pounds, she's going to scream bloody murder if someone is holding on her like that. And I think that the officer should have used better. I think that he could have used a different situation on my wife than to hold her down like that. That's the way I feel about that, Mel.
Also in the complaint, as I read, and by the way, I want Columbus to know that it has been filed with the Columbus Police Department, so we're not really hiding anything. It's for public records if you want to just check upon the information yourself to find out how true it is. But in the complaint, it also says that there were some witnesses that witnessed to the fact that she was disrespectful, and that there was some disrespect coming from you as well. And yet you tell me earlier before this taping that there weren't any witnesses around.
Well, you know, this is a way to collaborate their story, because anytime, and I can tell you this for sure though, Mel, that at any time I never saw any of the witnesses that they're talking about in that report. These are all ghost witnesses.
So they actually made up the name that's here in this complaint?
No, they didn't make them up, but they probably got somebody to collaborate their story.
Because this person that witnessed the incident happens to be an employee of the Sunoco gas station where you were parked.
Let me go a little step further on that, because, Mel, another thing is, too, this same individual that is an employee for the Sunoco, the owner is also involved in a police athletic league, or a league that they have for police officers. Mm-hmm. So some of those guys that work in those, work at that Sunoco station are somewhat associated with knowing some of these cops. And what they do is anytime that they need something collaborated, they'll step to the bat and say, I'll say I saw that. I saw the whole thing, and that's the way it goes, because I never saw any one of those witnesses, Mel, at any time.
So you're saying that it's a possibility
That they got someone as an employee to collaborate their story, whether they were inside or wherever they were, or I don't care where they came from. There were no one on the scene that I saw. I never saw three people that collaborated a story. I never saw that.
At any time, was there ever an apology made from any of the officers that were involved in this situation? At any time during the incident?
No. More so than anything, they're not going to go there. They're not going to go there.
Not one officer stepped up during the time of this incident and said, look, we are sorry for the harassment.
No,
we made a mistake.
They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that, Mel, because their pride is in there. Because after they let me out of the vehicle, after they had checked me out and found out that I wasn't this Mike Fair that they were possibly supposed to be stopping, I got out the vehicle and I asked them for their badge number, and this officer that disrespected my wife, he would not give me his badge number, and it's in the report.
Right. But it is also said that you eventually found out what his badge number was.
I sure did.
How did that happen?
I had to go down to the police department to get it.
Okay. Okay. So, Mike, this happened in '94. We are now in the year of '96. How has this affected you and your wife's life? Or has it affected the life of your marriage in any way? And I know you get tearful talking about the situation, and I can understand how a person would feel, even though I have not been harassed by any police officers, but I have been harassed and by other persons in life. So I can understand what harassment is all about, especially when you're innocent. Mm-hmm. And you do feel that you were totally innocent, you and your wife, during this situation, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So since that time, what has happened?
Well, a lot of things have happened. I filed also, as you did state before, with the Justice Department. Police Officers for Equal Rights have been there for me. There's a lot of support out there in the community for me. It's just getting the word out now that you just can't treat people, law-abiding citizens, like this. I'm just, at this point, I tell you, Mel, this is really touching for me to try to talk about, but I just felt that it's time to more or less get it out there, because I feel that this is a people issue. It's not a black and white issue. It's not about Michael Fair. It's not about Tammy Fair. It's about treating people with respect. I've worked hard in the community. I've had my landscape company for 10 years. I employ over 10 guys at certain times of the year, and I have been a role model for my community. I have 3 daughters. I have a daughter, Nicole, Deanna, and Courtney. And this touches me because I feel that I need to step to the bat and let people know that these things do really happen to people that are law-abiding citizens. And I also feel until we speak up, we will never be heard.
Mike, do you feel that there are many others that are in the same situation or has been in the same situation that you've witnessed? Do you believe there are many others that are in the situation right now currently and that are scared to just stand out or speak up because
Right.
they are intimidated
Right.
by the police officers of this city?
Right. They just feel as though that they can just, you know, if they get a ticket or they get stopped, they get scared. People have rights. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and Rosa Parks, all these people stood up for something. I feel that by me coming forth again will maybe bring some more people out to speak up. This touches me. This touches me deeply. And it's hard for me to speak on it. But I'm going to find a way to speak out and to speak strong as I can about this misconduct that happens here in Columbus, Ohio. We must stand together because we can fall for anything.
That's right. Mike, you mentioned earlier that this is not a black and white thing, but others will say that it is. When you think about the Rodney King situation, when you think about just recently a helicopter filmed some migrants that were beaten by a sheriff's department. And yet you always see that white police officers are harassing black citizens. But not so often do you ever hear about black police officer harassing white citizens. When there's police brutality, when there's police beating, it's always the black person, the black man, the black female that is beaten by a white police officer. But never do you ever hear about a white citizen being beaten up by a black police officer. So many will disagree with you and say, yes, it is a black and white thing. Mm-hmm. But even though your situation, you might look at it as not being a black and white thing, that it was something that is happening or that has happened and not racially motivated in any other way, others will say that it is. Mm-hmm. So how do you handle a situation like that? I mean, how do you tell others that, well, we need, when you talk about having black police officers and white police officers collectively working together, how do you tell a community to stand strong and stand for what you believe in because you can fall for anything when you have a mixture of police officers working together? Some love, some hate. How do you handle that?
My projection on that would be now that anytime you get in a situation where you feel that you've been abused by any officer, that you would first report it to, you know, get you a citizen's complaint and fill it out and send it in and file it to the police officers downtown, Columbus Police Department. I'm sorry there, Mel. And then the next thing you do is go...
But Mike, they say that in filing a complaint means nothing. It's just another process of procedures of getting the paperwork done. And when it's investigated, you find officers protecting officers.
Okay.
So what do you do? How do you handle that?
Well, the next move would be, sir, is that Mel, you more or less have to file a suit with the Justice Department and let them look into the charges, because I feel here in Columbus, you're not going to get a fair shake in the system here. Everybody is, even when it comes to lawyers, I had a hard time even trying to talk to lawyers about my case because they just sort of just lost me in the paperwork. I talked to
tell me that you could not get one attorney.
I talked to one attorney since this thing happened, which I cannot mention her name.
Right.
She more or less lost me. She would not call me back. I pleaded with her even from the start. I told her I came in. I had tears in my eyes.
Are they scared of the system? Are they scared of tackling
I don't know what it is.
What is it?
Mel, I wish I really knew what it is that would make them not want to at least look into the situation at hand, whether it is just to call and find out is what I'm saying is true, call the different people, call police officers for equal rights, call the police department, check into the my investigation. I mean, there was nothing done. She just more or less, this individual, more or less hanged me out to dry. I had to go in and get my report from her because she wasn't doing anything. And the day that I went to go get her, she said, come get your report. And that was it. I mean, I was just hung out to dry. That's why I'm filled with so much emotion, because I'm still hurt. I feel like someone that's been raped, and nobody wants to listen to me. Nobody wants to believe that that really even happened. No, a police officer could never have done that, you know. But it did happen.
Well, Mike, don't you know they do it to their own?
Sure.
It happened within their own department, harassing one of their own
Sure.
Colleagues.
Sure.
And there was a out-of-court settlement within that case. So yes, it does happen.
Yes.
It even happens with their own. So you're here on Mills Place to say what?
To say this, that by me coming out and just more or less speaking out and telling my side of the story, I'm hoping that someone out there, and like I say again, this is not a black and white issue. This is a people issue. This is unwarranted misconduct on citizens, and it needs to stop. And if anyone out there that's listening today has any kind of complaint against the police officers, please call 253-4005 and report that. 253-4005.
And that number is
to Police Officers for Equal Rights.
That's 253-4005.
05. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's right. That's
Just,
right. That's
just a lot going through me right now, Mel.
That's 253-4005. Okay. Well, Mike, we are running out of time, and I want to thank you for coming on to Mills Place. And I know it was a tough situation. It is a tough situation right now as it stands, sitting there trying to reiterate your thoughts and conversation on such a hurtful situation. So I thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Are you mesmerized by